have been having many discussions in our online community about whether you should take the vaccine or not. And one of the characteristics of our community is that it is a civil place to have these discussions. Our community is not a toxic environment, and I just thank God for the grace that is over all the people who come to us, and we can have these discussions. And please understand that we all are not in agreement, as you would find also in your culture, that people have differing opinions when it comes to the vaccination. But because this topic is complex and there's many different angles to it, there is not one video or there's not one discussion that can cover all the aspects when it comes to decision making around whether you should get the vaccine or not. I have done a video speaking to one of those aspects, and that is the conscience issue. And I talked in that video about the conscience, the importance of the conscience, how you cannot sin against your conscience. And I will link that video in the description of this one. So if you want to watch that short video, you're welcome to do that. But please understand, that is just one piece of the pie. And so when you're talking about making a decision as to whether you get the vaccine or not, you need to consider the whole thing in a comprehensive manner. So in this video, I want to talk about another aspect, and that is comorbidity. Comorbidity is like you get the coronavirus, and then there are these other strangers that are tracking along in your COVID journey that really create extra havoc inside of your body. And so these are unwelcome strangers. These are physical problems that you have. And then COVID comes in, and all of these things work together, which actually exacerbates the risk. And it puts you at a higher risk if you have these comorbidities. And so a comorbidity is one or more physical issues that can exacerbate a person with COVID. For example, a 60-year-old person with no comorbidities whatsoever, they will have a better chance of overcoming COVID than a person at the exact same age but has multiple comorbidities. There are multiple strangers tracking along with the coronavirus. And so the question is, why is it vital when thinking about making a decision as to whether you should get the vaccine? Well, it's straightforward, because it matters. Now, one of the things that's perplexing to me is how people don't talk about comorbidity. What they do is they clump in everybody that died, and they will say so many thousands of people who were not vaccinated died of COVID-19, but they don't make a distinction between those who had comorbidities and those who didn't. And honestly, the overwhelming majority of people who died of COVID without the vaccine, they had comorbidities. And that's why it's important that you have to factor this in when you make your decision as to whether you should get the vaccine or not. I struggle sometimes when people ask me, Rick, did you get the vaccine? Because what some people can do is they take their cues from the decision that I made. And what they're not understanding is that it's never apples to apples. It's always apples to oranges. All the aspects that's involved in decision making about taking the vaccine or not, none of those aspects are the same for any two people. And so it's never apples to apples. And so I kind of cringe a little bit, and I'm very cautious about communicating to people the decisions that I made around taking the vaccine or not. Because again, it's not apples to apples, and you have to think uniquely about yourself. I mentioned the conscience issue. That's one of several considerations that you have to factor in to make this decision. Comorbidity, which is the point of this video here, but there's also other considerations as well. For example, the mandates. And what I mean by mandates is that some people have chosen to get the vaccine because they did not want to lose their jobs. They did not want to walk away from their careers, and I respect that. I don't criticize that at all. That's a unique decision that you have to make. And if I was ever put into the place where I would lose my career, I mean, that would be a game changer, and I would have to think through how I would think about getting the vaccine or not. And then there's other folks with the mandates. They have decided that I'm just going to walk away from my career and I'm going to reboot my life. And again, I respect that decision as well. But again, when you talk about getting a vaccine, it's never apples to apples, and there's multiple pieces to the pie. And so there is the conscience issue. There are the mandate problem. There's also natural immunity. If you have natural immunity, then your ability to not be at risk is far greater than a person who actually gets the vaccine. So natural immunity, according to the CDC, is better than getting the vaccine. And so that has to factor into it as well. And then another piece of this pie is the health risk issues, or what I am calling comorbidity. And so I want to give you a list of 19 things. I'll just quickly go through this. You can read this description in the video. You can stop the video if you wish, but just read it in the description. And I want you to think about this, because I don't know who you are. I don't know how many traveling strangers are tracking along inside your body, or if you have any comorbidities at all. The number one comorbidity, or maybe this is not in the list of order, but this is a big one, let me say it that way, are older adults. Older people, the elderly, are more likely to get severely ill from COVID-19. More than 81% of COVID-19 deaths occur in people who are over the age of 65. Now that's huge. And so if you're over the age of 65, you have one of those comorbidity strangers tracking along in you, and he will always be there. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just being an older person. And so the number of deaths among people over the age of 65, according to the CDC, is 80 times higher than the number of deaths among people who are 18 to 29. So if you're 30 years and under, then your comorbidity, at least in the age aspect, is much lower than a person who is over 65. And so that is a huge comorbidity factor that you want to think about. All right, here's a quick list of 18 more things. They're in alphabetical order, not necessarily order of importance, and it really just depends on if you have any of these things or not. Cancer, chronic kidney disease, chronic liver disease, chronic lung disease, dementia, or other neurological conditions, diabetes, type 1, type 2, Down syndrome, heart condition, HIV infection, a weakened immune system called immunocompromised state, overweight and obesity. It's important to distinguish between those two things, though both of them are comorbidities. I don't have the exact numbers in my mind, but overweight is your BMI, your body mass index, that it's like greater than 25 and under 30%. And again, you can Google this to get the exact numbers. And then obesity is bigger, and that is like, say, over 30%. And so in the United States, 36.5% of adults are obese. That is a phenomenal number. More than one third of every American is obese, which is bigger than overweight. And then there are another 32.5% of Americans, that's almost one third, who are overweight. And so if you put those two numbers together, more than 2/3 of all American adults are overweight, and that is a phenomenal number. Now, the good news about that, for most of those people who are overweight or obese, most, not all, and I understand that, but the good news is that you can affect that comorbidity. You can do something about that. Number 13 is pregnancy, and that can go both ways. Pregnancy is a comorbidity, but also get the vaccine, that could be a problem as well. Sickle cell disease, smoking, current or a former smoker, a organ or blood stem cell transplant, also a stroke, diseases that affect the blood or the flow to the brain, substance use as well, and then finally tuberculosis. Now there's more to the list, but I've given you 19, including being over the age of 65. Now, as I mentioned, some people can control these things. And if you can, then please, by all means, do something about it. And this is one of the perplexing things that I don't understand, is why aren't more people, the news outlets and so forth, talking about our health and how our health can be affected, how we can affect our health. And so if you can do something to affect your health, like say on the overweight thing, then please take a course of action. Gain some accountability. Help people to motivate you to eat healthily. Stop eating pizza. Stop drinking sodas. Start working on stop smoking, cigarettes. If you're not working out on a weekly basis, 3 times a week is the rule of thumb, then get yourself in the gym and get your heart rate up and start sweating a little bit. And then also a vibrant spiritual life, spending time with the Lord, but not just spending time with the Lord, spending time with other people who have a vibrant spiritual life. There is no question that toxic relationships exacerbate physical issues. As David said, that when he kept silent about his sin, God's hand was heavy upon him and his physicality was wasting away. Now, that was a sin issue that he had committed, the sin with Bathsheba. But if you live in a toxic environment can have an effect on your spirituality, which can have an effect on your physicality. And so if you can affect any of these things, I would encourage you to do that. One final note, it is intellectually dishonest to say that so many people or so many unvaccinated folks died from COVID when one of the most significant issues is a person's comorbidity that contributed to these deaths. And I think it's unfortunate that they clump all the unvaccinated into one number, but they don't get into the details of that and realize that the overwhelming majority of these people had comorbidities. And that's why this video is so important. And so if you have a comorbidity, especially one that you can affect, then by all means address your health, including your spiritual life, and affect that comorbidity. Minimize that stranger that's trekking along inside as much as you can. And even if you're over 65, if you can, get yourself in a better health if you need to. And so there are many aspects with making this decision of should you take the vaccine or not. I have not covered them all. You can watch my video on the conscience, this video here on comorbidity, and of course there are the other angles that I've mentioned as well. But I trust this will add and it will help as you think about what you should do. And as always, if you have any questions, please ask them. We do have a civil, grace-centered community on our website, and so you can come to our forums. They're free, by the way. They are underwritten by people who invest in our ministry, which allows us to do this right here and to give all of our resources away. We're not looking for people to pay for these things. We want to give them away. And the folks that believe in what we do, they invest, they underwrite this ministry financially, and allows us to do things just like this. So if we can serve you by discussing in dialogue, then please jump on our community forums at our website, and it would be our pleasure. Our team would gladly come around you and help you in whatever way that we can. Thanks for watching.